Good day. This is Group 6 presenting a video critique of a temporary philosophical essay. This is Bioethics 475. Group members are
Jasmine Colley,
Colonel Tabor,
Mario Louis,
Marissa Petty-Frail,
Rashawn Gray,
Sharon Joseph,
and Zanardi Fernando.
the intention of this presentation is to discuss Rand's views on socialism and to explore the advantages and disadvantages of socialism and its relation to socialist society. The article, The Virtue of Selfishness by philosopher Ayn Rand, submerged Rand's perspective of ethical issues. Chapter 11, The Monument Builders, focuses on the principal theory of socialism. Socialism is a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community. The view that Rand is discussing in the essay is that socialism is more of a political theory that prohibits individuals from property rights and essentially autonomy in general. According to Rand, every country that has tried socialism has failed. The aspects of the article that will be discussed are the negative effects of social in different societies and why the leaders of said nations choose this leadership style. We also intend to discuss the downsides and the potential benefits of socialism and give actual examples of its effects in some societies.
The first point we are focusing on, according to Rand, socialism is not a movement of the people. It is a movement of intellectuals, originated, led, and controlled by the intellectuals, carried by them out of their stuffy ivory towers into those bloody fields of practice where they unite with their allies and executors, the thugs. What then is the motive of such intellectuals? Power lust. Power lust as a manifestation of helplessness, of self-loathing, and of the desire for the unearned. Rand, 1964. The intellectuals solely look out for their personal benefits and to ensure that they have full control after painting a picture of a utopian society. Intellectuals strive off of influencing people heavily, which leads to the desire of the unearned, which is the conscience of others. These intellectuals meet up with countries that they go to war with and their trustees, which also carry out socialism. Rand's views of socialism is that it simply causes confusion and is unjust to the people who work hard for their earnings. Rand does not agree with socialism. Rand does not agree with socialism also because it is mostly no different from communism. Intellectuals restrict autonomy from the individuals, not allowing them to make the decision to contribute or to help, but just taking it away from them.
The second point, the consequences of socialism. As stated by Rand, instead of prosperity, socialism has brought economic paralysis and/or collapse to every country that tried it. The degree of socialization has been the degree of disaster. The consequences have varied accordingly. Rand, 1964. What Rand is implying is that though productions, consumption, and distributions are not governed by the state, it is being managed by persons that make it their mission to have full control and power over the society, which results in the country not thriving economically, and it's not a difference from a capitalist society. They both result in crippling a society and restricts persons' autonomy in some form. Though this seemed to be a good way to lead a society, There are a few underlying issues with this theory that stood out to us in this article.
So now the critique. Socialism, according to many societies, has proven to cause the downfall of many societies. An interesting view by Rand in The Monument Builders is that socialism has stagnated economies and left in ruin all countries that executed this form of government. However, in an example of a socialist society, revolutionaries Fidel Castro, who founded socialism in Cuba in 1965, and Mao Zedong, who founded Chinese socialism in 1921, they believed overtly that this was the best means of life for their nation. So what exactly are the supposed or aimed goals of socialism? Here are three. The first, reduction of relative poverty. A welfare state that provides a minimum basic income for those who are unemployed, sick, or unable to work, maintains a basic living standard for the poorest in society, and helps to reduce relative poverty, which from a utilitarian perspective can be perceived as a good thing, as well as it can increase utility. Next, free healthcare. This means that everyone is entitled to basic healthcare. This increases the living standards of those who cannot afford to pay private physicians. Ethics that would be in favor of this benefit are utilitarianism, beneficence, and utility. By reducing marginal utility of income, this perception entails that from a utilitarian perspective, redistributing the income from the rich to the poor in the society can increase the total happiness in the society. And this is because more people will be benefiting from the wealth. So all of this sounds pretty great. So why would Rand be so against socialism? Well, these are some downfalls of socialism. The first is a lack of incentives. If entrepreneurs feel as if the government is taking a high percentage of their profits, they are not more inclined to not take those risks and go abroad to work. Next, powerful unions can cause labor market antagonism. The goal of socialism is for a peaceful society. However, if socialist policies are aimed towards strengthening trade unions and aiming for perfect equality, it can cause opposition or a hostile relationship between workers and proprietors. And persons may feel as if their personal autonomy is being taken away. And it could lead to protests and possibly, in some cases, riots. And lastly, government failure. In an ideal world, the government would be successful in regulating firms, the labor markets, and running these public industries. However, the government can be prone to failure and actually inadequately allocate resources. And this is where non-maleficence can actually come into play, because if the government efforts of running a thriving socialist economy fails, the individuals of these nations could be worse off and struggle to get by on the bare minimum. So those are some potential downfalls of socialism. So now let's take a look at some real life consequences of socialism in society.
Okay, so one of the countries that is high on socialism is Cuba. And according to a study done by Selesky 2019, after 1956, when Fidel Castro implemented a socialism reform in Cuba, the economy took a major nosedive. One of his implementations was the reduction of rent by 50%. And while this was initially seen as something positive or something that would benefit the country so that everybody would be on an even playing field, it ultimately devastated the country because real estate investors refused to invest in properties, which led to businesses such as electronic workers and woodworkers to be put out of business because they had less work. And another implementation was the Agrarian Reform Law. And this law caused private properties to be confiscated by the government without payment to the rightfully owners. And large and small businesses were seized, which also stifled the economy, whereby thousands were left unemployed. So these are just two examples of the negative effects of socialism in Cuba. So in this study, we can see that from this study, both Shelitsky and Rand share the same views that socialism restricts one of their autonomy and it is negative for our society. Rand, 1964, also gave the example of Europe's socialist societies, whereby many struggled to escape Europe over barbed fence while machine guns were fired at them. So this gives an example or depiction of how hostile and how often violent oppositions against socialism reforms can be. Now, those are the negative effects that Rand in her essay portrayed. However, another notable country, China, which is high on socialism, shows some positive benefits of this type of government. So China transitioned from a socialist economy to a socialist market economy. And because of this, they became one of the largest production countries in the world. This communist regime of China realized that it would be more of a disadvantage to keep the country purely socialist and secluded from the rest of the world. So as a result, there was new policies which allowed for entrepreneurs and investors to be able to make a profit, but within the control of the state. So investors could have invested in the state, but with the output of the monies that would leave in the state was controlled by the government. So it still was a type of socialism. Moreover, around 2004, the government of China began to allow persons the right to property. And this move helped establish a special economic zone whereby the international trade can be allowed, which progress the further country's economic growth. So some might be undecided whether or not socialism is positive for a community or whether it is negative for a community.
While we can all agree that indeed socialism is unjust and normally causes more societal damage than good, there are some positive outcomes, whereby we are in agreement with the author as she strongly fights against societal socialism, for which it is immoral and seeks to take away one's autonomy. Moreover, most countries who have tried this method have collapsed or failed its economy. To conclude the information given, we have analyzed the advantages and disadvantages of socialist countries such as China and Cuba.
According to the socialist system, each person is guaranteed access to basic goods, even those who are not able to contribute. As a result, the system helped to minimize poverty level in some societies. While we were doing our research, these were some of the advantages and disadvantages of socialism. The advantages are reduced poverty, free healthcare, equal income. Disadvantage of socialism, lack of incentive, failing government, and work inequality.
And these are our references. Thank you for listening.
Good day.